DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves me, you, him, her, them, and they to go make things happen instead of wait for things to happen. And we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one masterclass. This is a daily masterclass. Yes, you heard me correctly. This is a daily masterclass. No vacations over here. That is called, work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to start a fire when nothing is happening. How do you start a fire when there's no energy going? There's nothing popping off. What can you do? Is anybody who's listening to this right now in dire need of this topic? Yes, I know you are. All right, I'm reading your brain. That's why this episode is out. That's why this show is what this show is. So make sure you tell your friends about it. Only thing I'm asking for you in exchange for the daily game that I'm giving you here on this show is that you leave a review of the show. If you're listening, listen, I know how many listeners we've had at this show. The show has been listened to over 3 million times over the last 4 years. Now, I know many of you have listened to 1,000 of these episodes, so it doesn't mean that's 3 million people, but it does mean 3 million times. I think we have, as of this recording, we got about 440 or so reviews on Apple Podcasts of this show. And I know all y'all don't have Apple devices. Okay, so now considering all of that, I believe there are more than 440 people with Apple devices who listen to this show. So those of you who have not yet, all right, could you please leave a damn review of the show? Leave a rating, the stars that they got there. And then write something in there to let everybody else know, to let the other people know, because there's so many podcasts out here these days. This is a masterclass, but we're in the podcasting app. So there's a whole bunch of podcasts out here who are competing for people's time and attention. And some people don't know about Dre Baldwin. They don't know about working your game. So when they're browsing through, they need to hear, not from me, but from you, that this is the place that they need to be. So if y'all can help me, help them, okay? Please leave a review of the show and let them know the kind of game that we are dropping here every single day. All that being said, back to the topic. Again, those who here is listening to this, who right now is nothing really happening for you, and you want something to be happening, but it's not happening, and you're kind of at the end of your wits. You don't know how to get it started, or maybe things are happening for you, but they're not quite happening at the pace that you want them to be happening at, or the energy is just not there the way that you want it to be. All right, this topic that we're talking about here today is made for you. I made this specifically for you. All right, not for everybody. I made it for you. This is a topic of personal initiative. Like we talk about here every day, how to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Now, all of us, some people are facing it right now, but all of us have, will, and some of us are facing times in life when we want things to be happening, but nothing seems to be catching. So how do you actually start that fire? How do you get things going and heat things up in your life, in your career, in your whatever is important to you? How do you get started with that? Today, I'm going to tell you how to do that. I got 3 points here that I'm going to give you on how to actually start a fire when there is no fire. Point number 1, the topic once again, is how to start a fire when nothing is happening. First thing you have to do, this is a decision that you have to make, is to supply the energy. You must be the supplier of the energy. In other words, if you're waiting for your phone to ring but nobody's calling, then what you need to do is start making the calls yourself. If you're waiting for someone to knock on your door but nobody's knocking, you need to start knocking on doors. The first law of thermodynamics, okay, also known as the law of conservation of energy, states the following. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. Let me repeat that. This is the first law of thermodynamics, also known as the law of conservation of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. In other words, when nothing is popping off for you, that does not mean that the energy has gone away or that the energy was destroyed or that the energy disappeared. No, none of those things are true. It just means that the energy needs to be converted from one form to another, such as, for example, when you walk into a room, a dark room, and you turn on the light, now you might feel like energy was created there, but that's actually not true. What happened is the energy just converted from being stored energy to active energy. It went from being potential energy to kinetic energy. The energy was already there, just waiting. As soon as you turn the light switch, immediately that energy goes straight to the light bulb. It lights up the filament, and all of a sudden you have light. All right, and it seems automatic that the energy was just generated, but no, it was all sitting there in one place. This is just science, and that's as far as I'm gonna explain science ever here on the show. But I want you all to understand, point number one again, supplying the energy. This is more of a decision than it is an action. Having energy is a choice. Because since energy is neither created nor destroyed, the amount of energy that you need to do what you need to do, all right, it doesn't just disappear from you. It's just a matter of you making the choice to have that energy and how and when you're going to use that energy and what are you going to use that energy towards. This is a choice that you have to make on a consistent basis. If you want to be the person in your group, in your organization, in your family, on your team, in your partnership, who everybody else follows. If you want to be the leader, if you want to be the one who inspires others, you have to choose to consistently bring the energy and represent the energy that you want other people to have. I have a masterclass coming where we talk about empowerment of other people. We're going to be talking about this. But you have to make the decision that you're going to be this person regardless of what's going on, especially when things aren't popping off the right way, especially when nothing is working the way that you want it to be working. This is actually the most important time when you bring that energy in life, is when things aren't going the way that you want them to be going. You have to be the person who has that energy, who's the person that everybody else can look to and say, all right, things aren't going the way that we want them to go right now, but look at Mike. Look at Jason, look at Mr. Johnson, whoever the boss is, whoever it happens to be. You have to decide to bring that energy on a consistent basis. And if you're not bringing it, then you can't expect anybody else in your team to bring it, especially if you're the person who's the leader. There are a couple quotes that I want to share with you here. One is by Sun Tzu. He's the author of a book called The Art of War. If you haven't read that book, I suggest you read it, even if you don't want to go to war and you don't want to chop anybody's heads off. The book is not really about that. It's more about strategy, but it's called The Art of War because the principles came from the battlefield. But these apply even in business. They apply in day-to-day life, even for an individual person. Here's the quote. And this is a quote by Sun Tzu. However desperate the situation and circumstances, don't despair. When there is everything to fear, be unafraid. When surrounded by dangers, fear none of them. When without resources, depend on resourcefulness. When surprised, take the enemy itself by surprise. This is the energy that you have to, again, I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. This is the energy that you have to decide to have consistently for yourself. First of all, for yourself, because if you can't have it for you, then nobody's ever going to want you to lead a group. Then with anyone that you happen to be interacting with, especially in any group in which you have a position of authority, a position of leadership. That could be in a family, it could be in a partnership with two people, a business team, a sports team, a startup group, an investment group, whatever it is that you're doing. I'll give you another quote that came from a book called I believe this one was called I think it was either Go Giver or I think it was called It's Not About You. And this is a book by John David Mann and Bob Berg. And they wrote a couple books together, but this one is about, I believe it's not about you, but this is a book about an allegorical tale of a man who was going to buy a business, and he was looking into what the business did and trying to decide, should we invest in this business, should we not invest in this business? And there was a certain point in the story where the investor, who's coming from this company with all this money, this investment money, he's talking to the owner of the company that they're thinking about buying, and the company wasn't doing too good at that point. And the investor was talking to the owner of this company, the struggling company, and the owner of the struggling company made a great statement in explaining to the investor how he was able to stay positive as the owner of the business, even though the business wasn't doing as well as he wanted it to do. This is what he said, and this is another quote. The single biggest challenge to any organization is the constant cloud of fear and doubt that swirls around the heads of the people involved. As a leader, your job is to hold fast to the big picture, to keep seeing in your mind's eye with crystal clarity where it is you're going. That place that right at this moment exists only in your mind's eye. And to keep seeing that even when nobody else does, especially when nobody else does. Your people count on you to do this. It's the biggest job you have. Let's move on to point number 2. The topic once again today is how to start a fire when nothing is working. Number 2, try something that you wouldn't try if the normal way was working. If everything was working the way that you expected it to, or the way that somebody told you that it would, or the way that it did the last time you did it, or the last 20 times that you did it, or the way that it always has in your life up until this point, or your career up until this point, if everything was working normally, you probably wouldn't think of doing this thing. Maybe you thought about it, but you're like, I don't need to do that because everything's working normally right now. Now, that thing that you told yourself you don't need to do because everything was working, well, guess what? Right now, everything's not working. Maybe you might want to try it this time. Maybe you might want to pull it out and blow the dust off it and try that thing that you otherwise wouldn't do because you didn't need to. Now, this is to assume, I'm going to assume in making you this offer of this action that you tried what you expected to work and it didn't work. All right, so if you haven't yet done the normal things to make things work, and you haven't done all those yet, then you don't need to pull out what I'm telling you here in point number 2. So if you haven't done that, then I would suggest you go listen to episode number 1643 about making discipline easy, and episode number 1202, why you struggle with discipline. So if you just haven't executed all your disciplines yet and just done the normal things that you're supposed to, and checked off all your checks and balances, then you got to go see the episodes on discipline. But assuming that you have done those things already, here's the question I'm going to ask you. What would you not do or not need to do when everything was working in the normal way that should now be a possibility? It should at least be on your board of possibilities right now because all the normal things ain't doing what they're supposed to do. If you read my book, Work on Your Game, I told you this story of how, as a professional basketball player, the normal process for getting signed to a contract playing basketball overseas is that you either have a direct connection to a team and or you have a direct connection to an agent. And an agent in the basketball world works the same way that an agent works in the acting world or the modeling world or any other place where agents work. And the agent is basically the go-between. And the agent knows the teams and they know the talent, which is the players or the actors or the whoever or the models, and they do the connection. So that's the normal way to get a job playing basketball overseas. And that normally had worked for me, but there was a point when it wasn't working for me. And I really needed to get back into playing professional basketball overseas with all the normal routes of doing it. And there were only 3 normal routes. Go to an exposure camp and connect with somebody, reach out to a team directly and do it that way, or deal with an agent and do it that way. None of them had worked up to that point. So I decided that I was going to go after this reaching out to a team, direct connection to a team route, and I was going to keep trying it until it worked. Not if it worked, not to see how it would work. Notice the operative word there, until it worked. So what I do, I sent out thousands of emails to hundreds of teams and I made it pop off. I made it happen. Now you might be wondering, how do you send thousands of emails to hundreds of teams? That doesn't add up. There's some bad math there. No, the math is correct. I mean, I reached out to the same teams over and over again. I just used different iterations of how I was reaching out and how I was selling myself in order to, just to see what was going to work. I tried different iterations. And I was only looking for one team to sign me. Thousands of emails to hundreds of teams to get one team to sign me. It worked. There was a lot of work that went into it. But the reason I'm telling you that is to tell you this, that I would not have done had the other ways worked. Had the normal process been producing a result, I wouldn't have even thought of doing that thing. But since the normal process wasn't working, I said, all right, let me try some things that I otherwise wouldn't try. And if you watch football, for example, sometimes when an underdog team is playing against a highly favored football team in college football, often, maybe not so much in the NFL, but in college football, you'll see teams pull out these random trick plays, maybe multiple trick plays over the course of a game, because they're like, okay, the only way we're going to beat this team, we're not going to beat this other team, this highly favored team. We're not going to beat them on talent because they have a little bit more talent than us, maybe a lot more talent than us. We're not going to beat them on just straight up execution because they might be better at executing than we are. And that might be why they're a heavily favored team and why they're ranked in the top 10 and we're not ranked at all. We can't even win our conference. So in order for us to beat them, we're going to have to do some things that we normally wouldn't do. Things that we won't need to do when we're playing against a team of equal talent level as us. But since it's not an equal talent competition, we're going to have to do some things that the normal ways of winning aren't going to work for us today. Let's do something different. In life, when you're in a situation that is not normal anymore, maybe you're used to it being normal, but all of a sudden it has changed from being normal, you might need to respond in a different way. You might need to do something other than what the consensus tells you to do or what everybody else would, the first response that people would give you. And if you tried all the responses and they're not working, okay, what are you going to do different? Are you willing to do something different? Because that might be what you need to do in order to make this fire pop off. And remember, today's topic is how to start a fire when there is none. Let's move on to point number 3. Topic once again, how to start a fire when there is nothing happening right now in your life, career, business, etc. Number 3 is mental alchemy must be performed. Now, what is alchemy? Definition is a seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination. That is what alchemy means. This is the act of taking energy. Now I'm translating this into layman's terms so everybody understand. This is the act, this mental alchemy, of taking the energy that you're feeling right now. Those of you who are experiencing the situation of no fire happening in your life, but you need one, take the energy of despair, sadness, frustration, anger, whatever else you could be feeling right now, because you're mired in this energy of really focusing on the fact that things are not working for you. Take that energy and you transform it into the energy of action that you need to incite a blaze, to get that blaze going, to start that fire. So energy that you already have, the energy of despair, sadness, and frustration, listen, that energy will work for you. Remember the first law of thermodynamics. It's just the law of energy conservation. The energy is there. Just the energy of despair or frustration or sadness is the energy of sitting still, looking at and thinking about your situation and being pissed off or sad or upset about the fact that it's not working for you. But that is energy. All right, sadness is an energy. Frustration is an energy. Despair is an energy. Anger is an energy. All of these things are energies. It's just a matter you need to change those energies and use them in different ways. And I did an episode on, let me grab that episode. This is episode number 109. I talked about how to use anger in a mature way, but there's another one that I want to find here. I had to find it. So while I'm talking, I'm looking through these episodes and trying to find that one that I used here. It is, let me see if I can find it. Yes, I'm looking through right now trying to find it. I have a way of looking through these. It's not like I'm scrolling through all 1,700 episodes trying to find this. This is episode number 678. Just have to find the right keyword here. The topic is, here's why you perform so well when you're angry. Any of you who ever found yourself really performing at a super high level when you get angry, there's a reason why. And one of the reasons is because anger sharpens your focus. And again, it's episode number 678. You can go listen to that on your own. We're going to dreallday.com/678. This is a mental alchemy. The mental alchemy of feeling that energy, despair, sadness, frustration, taking that energy and translating it into action. This is the mental alchemy that you need to start a fire when there is no fire. And one of my favorite books, The 50th Law by Robert Greene and 50 Cent. 50 tells a story of how after he got shot, he was recovering from his gun wounds. He was laid up in the bed. He couldn't really move too much. And he was just listening to the radio all day, every day. And of course, listening to the radio, he would hear what was passed off at the time as gangster rap. And this is no violent, no drug dealing, shooting people, beating them up, very aggressive music that we all know and some of us love to this day. And 50 said that he would listen to that music on the radio, and he knew that the rappers who were doing this gangster rapping were not telling the truth. He knew that they were rapping about a life that they had not actually lived, because 50 knew what it was like to be in the streets. He knew what it was like to be a real gangster who happened to be rapping also. And listening to that, he listened to the music here on the radio. He knew these guys were just acting. He knew these guys were just pretending. And listening to that, it kind of angered him and pissed him off that there were people out there passing themselves off as gangster rappers when they hadn't lived a day of being a real gangster. And 50 himself, he realized while listening to that, hey, I got a real gangster rap story now, and everybody knows about it. So I don't even have to stress to people that what happened actually happened. Look, everybody knows that I got shot. I got these 9 bullet wounds to prove that I really am a real gangster. These are things that really happen when you're out here in these streets. Now I got a story everybody knows about. I can come out and be a true gangster rapper, and everybody's going to believe it, and I can be 100% honest about it because everybody knows it happened anyway. What he did was alchemize his sadness and his despair, because listen, I don't know how happy you can be if you get shot 9 times, even though you survived it. I guess he could be thankful for that, but his life still wasn't looking too good. Now, mind you, at this time, as he's recovering from his gunshot wounds, there's no He didn't have a record contract. Nobody was trying to sign him. He didn't have a buzz in the streets for getting shot. Most people had just left him for dead. Most people were like, oh, there's another rapper that got shot. All right, we'll see him later. Who's the next rapper to come up? So this sadness and despair that said, all right, where is this guy going to go with his life? He was trying to get on in music. Then he got shot. Then the people who were going to deal with him in music said they're not dealing with him anymore. So the record deal opportunity was gone. Nobody in the streets wanted to deal with him because he had just gotten shot. So he was a moving target at that point. He didn't have any other prospects at looking at in his life. I mean, it's not like this guy had a college degree. So what was he going to do? His life was not looking too good at this point. But he alchemized that energy of things not looking good. He turned it into forward action energy. And then he created the G Unit and started putting out all these mixtapes. And I mean, you know the rest of the story. You can look it up yourself. That was all a mental alchemy. So you, who's listening to me right now you might be feeling some of these energies that 50 was feeling back then. Nothing is working for me. Nobody's answering my phones. Nobody's paying attention to me. Nobody seems to be very interested in what I have going on. The same energy that makes you feel bad about your situation, understand, it's the same, what was that key word? Starts with an E, energy. It is energy. And as long as you follow and you believe in science, and you follow that law of thermodynamics, the law of conservation of energy is there. It's just a matter of you transforming it into a different form of energy. All right, because energy doesn't go away. Energy is not created. It's just moved into different forms. Let's recap today's class, which is how to start a fire when nothing is happening. This is a topic of personal initiative, and is especially made for the person who is right now today in a situation where things are not happening, but you want things to happen. Nothing seems to be catching on no matter what you try. The question is, how do you start that fire? I'm going to tell you. Point number one, supply the energy. Nobody's calling your phone, you make calls. Nobody's knocking on your door, you knock on doors. First law of thermodynamics, also known as the law of conservation of energy, states energy is neither created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. When nothing's popping off for you, that's not to say that the energy has gone away. It just means that the energy that you are feeling needs to be converted into the kind of energy that will move you forward to action. Reading again from the book called It's Not About You by John David Mann and Bob Berg. I think the book was called It's Not About You. So if I misquoted the book, I misquoted the title of the book. This is an actual quote, but if I got the title of the book wrong, forgive me. But anyway, the quote is, the single biggest challenge in any organization is the constant cloud of fear and doubt that swirls around the heads of the people involved. As a leader, your job is to hold fast to the big picture, to keep seeing in your mind's eye with crystal clarity where it is you're going, the place that right at this moment exists only in your mind's eye, and to keep seeing that even when nobody else does, especially when nobody else does. Your people count on you to do this. Is the biggest job you have. And also quoting from Sun Tzu from The Art of War. However desperate the situation and circumstances, don't despair. When there is everything to fear, be unafraid. When surrounded by dangers, fear none of them. When without resources, depend on resourcefulness. When surprised, take the enemy itself by surprise. Point number two, try something that you wouldn't try the normal way was working. I sent out thousands of emails to hundreds of basketball teams because the normal way of getting on a basketball team wasn't working for me, and this new way worked. When things are not working the normal way for you, you must be willing and able to try something other than what you would normally do, to go off the beaten path and do something differently. You have nothing to lose anyway. If it doesn't work, you're still in the same spot. And point number three, mental alchemy. Definition of alchemy is a seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination. Notice the key word, seemingly magical process. It is not actual magic. It's just a decision that you make to take the energy that you already have, and again, following the science of the first law of thermodynamics. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. You just transfer it or change it from one form to another. So if you're feeling despair or sadness or frustration or anger about your lack of progress right now, that is energy. You can transfer that energy into a different form and change it into forward-moving, personal initiative-ish action. The same way that 50 Cent did after getting shot. You saw what happened with him. You can do the exact same thing for yourself, but you must choose this mental alchemy. That's how you start a fire when there isn't any fire. I'm getting hot already. Work on your game. Dre all day.